The fire alarm began as a shrill, metallic cry in the quiet of Ashford Mall's closing hour. At first, the shoppers thought it was nothing, another faulty sensor in a building long past its prime. But when smoke curled faintly from the food court vents, panic followed. Mothers clutched children. Teenagers dropped their sodas. Store clerks scrambled to lock registers. Sheriff Mark Ellery was already there, sipping burnt coffee from the security office, his K-9 partner, a sable German shepherd named Rook, at his feet. What seemed like a routine evacuation would soon unearth something no one in Ashford's quiet town was prepared for, something that had been waiting behind the food court, patient as a predator in the dark. If you enjoy these kind of stories and want to hear more, your quiet support, just a like or a follow, goes further than you'd think. The mall had been dying for years. Anyone could see it. Half-empty corridors echoing with hollow music from broken speakers, fluorescent lights buzzing, a handful of stores clinging to life like stubborn weeds in cracked pavement. But still, on Friday nights, Ashford's teenagers gathered there. Parents came for groceries, quick meals, or the solace of familiarity. That night, Sheriff Mark Ellery leaned against the cold steel desk of the mall's security office. He was 48, shoulders slouched from years of rural policing, his tie loosened and his eyes tired. He preferred patrol the county roads, not babysit a struggling mall. But budgets were thin, and complaints about loitering kids and drunk vagrants made him a regular presence here. Rook lay stretched out his feet, ears perked even as his eyes drooped. The dog was lean, muscles rippling under a glossy coat, his alertness a sharp contrast to his handler's weariness. "Another glamorous Friday night," Mark muttered, sipping stale coffee. "You love it," said Caleb Price, the mall's head of security. He was younger, mid-30s, clean-cut, but with a thinness around the eyes that spoke of debts, compromises, or both. Better than chasing meth heads out on County Line, right? Mark gave a grunt. He didn't dislike Caleb, but he didn't trust him either. Something about the man's smile never reached his eyes. Still, he was useful, knew the mall's guts better than anyone. The fire alarm erupted without warning. The shriek cut through the office like a blade. Rook was on his paws instantly, ears sharp, a low growl rising in his throat. Mark dropped his cup, hot coffee spattering across the desk. "Where?" Caleb's radio crackled. A teenage cashier's panicked voice. "It's the food court. Smoke. I think it's coming from the vents. People are freaking out." Mark shoved past Caleb. Rook at his side, boots pounding against linoleum as the alarm's red strobes pulsed down the hallway. He caught glimpses of chaos. Families rushing toward exits, a store manager shoving a drawer into a bag, teenagers laughing nervously as if to cover fear. "Clear him out." Mark barked at Caleb. "I'll check the court." The food court sat at the far end of the mall, near the boarded-up old Sears. Even before he reached it, Mark smelled something acrid, not burning food, but chemical, sharp and metallic. It stung his nose, clung to his throat. He slowed, hand on the butt of his holstered gun. Rook stiffened. His hackles rose, nostrils flaring as he pulled against the leash, not toward the smoke, but away from it, toward a darkened service corridor that ran behind the food stalls. Mark frowned. "Not the court? What is it, boy?" Rook gave a low bark and tugged again. Mark glanced back. The food court was empty now. Trays abandoned, smoke curling from a vent above the closed pizza stand. Sprinklers hadn't gone off. That was odd. The dog pulled harder, claws clicking against tile. Mark hesitated. Behind that corridor lay only service doors, dumpsters, and old maintenance rooms. But Rook was trained bombs, drugs, cadavers. If he was pulling, there was a reason. "All right," Mark muttered. "Show me." He let the dog lead. The corridor smelled different. Damp concrete, mildew, and something coppery underneath. Emergency lights cast the walls in a faint red glow. Their footsteps echoed. Rook stopped at a steel service door behind the Chinese takeout stand. He whined, nose pressed to the bottom seam. Mark's gut tightened. He reached for the handle. Locked. Of course. He pulled a ring of master keys from his belt, fumbling under the wail of the alarm. Behind him, the mall sounded distant now, muffled screams fading as the crowd emptied. This place suddenly felt cut off, sealed. The third key clicked. The door creaked open. Darkness. A single bulb flickered overhead, casting more shadow than light. The smell hit him first. Rot, sickly sweet, layered over with disinfectant that had long lost its battle. Rook growled, deep and guttural. Mark stepped inside. The room looked like old storage, abandoned shelves, broken mop buckets, a sagging couch. But against the far wall stood something that froze him, a series of meat hooks bolted into a steel beam. They glistened faintly. Dark stains streaked the floor beneath them. Jesus Christ. He stepped closer. A plastic tub sat below the hooks, liquid pooling inside. He didn't want to know what it was, but the stench made it clear enough. Rook barked sharply, snapping his attention left. A curtain of tarp hung in the corner, concealing a smaller space. Mark's breath went shallow. He pulled his gun, thumb on the safety. His hand trembled, not from fear exactly, but from the weight of something he couldn't yet name. He reached out, hooked a finger into the tarp, and pulled it back. Inside was a makeshift room, bare bulb metal table, restraints bolted into its frame. And lying across the table, pale as wax, was a body, a girl, 17, maybe 18, blonde hair matted with blood. Her chest rose, faint, shallow. She was alive. Sheriff. The voice came from behind him. Mark spun. Caleb stood in the doorway, his expression unreadable in the strobing red light. "You weren't supposed to see this," he said softly. Rook lunged, snarling. Mark's mind split, gun raised at Caleb, eyes darting to the girl on the table, the meat hooks, the tub of dark liquid. Questions burned, but only one thing was clear. The fire alarm wasn't meant to save lives. It was meant to clear them all. And Mark Ellery had just opened the wrong door. The alarm still howled in the distance, a banshee echo swallowed by the concrete walls. But in the service room its scream felt muffled, like sound struggling to escape a coffin. Sheriff Mark Ellery's gun trembled in his hand as he leveled it at Caleb Price. The mall security chief filled the doorway, his body cutting off the red strobe glow from the hall behind him. "You knew," Mark said, voice hoarse. "You knew this was here." Caleb's mouth twitched. For a moment he looked almost regretful, but then something colder slid over his expression. He stepped into the room, slow, deliberate, as if entering a church. "You've got no idea what you've walked into," he said. Rook's growl deepened, a low vibration that seemed to shake the tiles. Mark shifted his aim toward Caleb's chest. "That girl's alive. You're going to help me get her out." Caleb didn't flinch. Instead, he let his eyes flick to the girl, then back to Mark. "Alive? Yeah, barely. You think she wants saving? You think she wants the world to see what's been done to her? Cut the cryptic shit." Mark's voice cracked like a whip. "Move." But Caleb didn't. He just smiled faintly, the kind of smile men wear when they've already won. "You think this is me? You think I did this?" His tone was calm, too calm. "You're in Ashford, Sheriff. Small town. Everyone knows everyone. You've been here long enough to know this mall isn't dying by accident. The rent, the deals, the chains pulling out, it's all cover. This place that's useful." Mark's finger tightened on the trigger. "Useful for what?" Caleb's eyes glittered. "For people who pay well." The words chilled the air between them. Rook barked suddenly, lunging forward as if to snap the tension. The girl stirred on the table, letting out a faint whimper. That sound, thin, broken, hit Mark harder than Caleb's words. He wasn't just looking at a crime scene. He was looking at someone's daughter, someone's missing face on a poster. He stepped toward her, keeping his gun trained on Caleb. "You're coming with us. Either you walk out of here or I drag you out in cuffs." Caleb tilted his head. "And if I don't, then I put you down where you stand." A long silence stretched. Finally, Caleb raised his hand slowly, like a man conceding to an arrest, but his eyes never left Mark's. "You don't get it," he said softly. "You don't get how far this goes." The girl was lighter than she looked. Mark holstered his gun, scooped her into his arms, and nearly staggered at how frail she was. Rook circled him, ears pricked, nose twitching, pacing between him and Caleb like a shadow ready to strike. "Lead us out," Mark ordered. Caleb's lips pressed into a thin line. He turned and stepped back into the hallway. Mark followed. Every muscle wound tight, the girl's shallow breasts hot against his neck. The corridor seemed darker now, longer, the emergency lights throwing warped shadows. Somewhere above, the alarm stuttered, then died, leaving behind a silence more suffocating than the noise. Who cut it? Mark demanded. Caleb didn't answer. His pace slowed as they neared the food court, footsteps echoing in hollow rhythm. Then Rook froze. The shepherd stopped dead, body rigid, nose high. His growl returned, sharp and guttural. Mark turned his head, caught it too, a faint shuffle. Not Caleb's, not his own. Another set of footsteps, quick, retreating. Who else is here? Mark hissed. Caleb kept walking. You don't want to know. Mark's skin prickled. He shifted the girl's weight, her limp arm swinging. Stop. Caleb obeyed this time, turning slowly. His eyes were hard now, no pretense of civility left. Sheriff, if you were smart, you'd take her and walk away. Right now, you've still got a chance. No reports filed. No photos. Pretend you never opened that door. Mark's blood boiled. And let whoever's behind this keep using that room. Caleb shrugged. You think the county will do anything? You've been a cop here long enough to know how things work. People go missing. Reports get buried. Families move on or they don't. But the world keeps spinning. You push this, and you'll find out just how alone you really are. The honesty in his voice hit harder than the threat. For a moment, Mark saw the truth of it. His tiny office with a skeleton crew, the county budget bleeding out, the mayor's warnings to pick your battles. He was alone. But then the girl moaned again, faint and broken, and the sound burned through his doubts. I don't care if I have to drag this whole rotten county down, he said, voice low and trembling with rage. This ends tonight. They reached the food court. Empty. Tables overturned, napkins scattered like white leaves across the tile. The smoke had thinned, drifting like ghosts above the abandoned stalls. The front entrance loomed ahead. Safety, escape, light from the parking lot bleeding into the glass. Mark's chest eased just slightly. He shifted the girl, adjusted his grip. Movement. A shadow detached itself from behind the burger stand. Another figure. Then another. Two men, both in dark clothes, faces hidden by ball caps. One carried something long and gleaming in the strobe light. A crowbar. The other's hand rested near his belt, where the outline of a gun bulged. Caleb stepped aside, almost casually. Mark's blood went cold. You son of a... The crowbar man swung. Mark jerked back, twisting his body to shield the girl. The metal bar whistled past, smashing into a chair with a crash that echoed through the empty mall. Rook lunged like a bullet. The shepherd hit the man's arm, teeth sinking deep. The crowbar clattered to the ground as the attacker howled in pain, thrashing against the weight of 100 pounds of furious dog. The second man drew his gun. Mark dropped to one knee, cradling the girl, pulling his own weapon free. The mall lit up with thunder. His shot cracked against the marble floor, sparks flying. The second man fired back. Glass shattered, tiles burst. Caleb ducked behind a pillar, smirking, safe in the chaos. Mark's heart slammed against his ribs. He couldn't risk another shot with the girl in his arms. He had seconds, maybe less. Rook, he barked. The shepherd obeyed instantly. He released the first man's arm, pivoted, and hurled himself at the gunman. The man fired again, but the bullet went wide as Rook's weight crashed into his chest. The gun skidded across the tile. Mark bolted for the exit, the girl heavy in his arms, his breath ragged. The glass doors loomed ahead, freedom sirens back up. But as he neared them, a sick realization hit him. The doors weren't locked from the inside. They were chained shut. Heavy padlocks glittered in the red glow. Steel links pulled tight across the bars. Mark staggered to a halt, chest heaving. Behind him, Rook snarled, men cursed, boots pounded. In front of him, the way out was sealed. And somewhere deep in the mall, past the food court and the hidden rooms, Mark swore he could hear another sound. Soft, almost like a child's cry, echoing through the vents. The chains rattled as Sheriff Mark Ellery yanked the handles, the girl limp in his arms. Padlocks gleamed like iron teeth in the strobing red. Behind him, chaos cracked the silence. Boots thundering, curses spat, Rook's furious barks echoing like gunshots. They were trapped. Mark's heart pounded in his ears. His mind sprinted through options. Shoot the lock? Maybe, but not while carrying her. One mistake, and the bullet ricocheted into her chest. He could put her down, but the floor was glass and shrapnel. She wouldn't survive another hit. Sheriff. Caleb's voice rang out across the food court. Mark turned. Caleb stepped from behind a pillar, face lit by the red strobe. His hands were raised as if to parley, but his expression was calm, too calm, like a man playing chess moves already made. You don't have to die here, Caleb said. Hand her over. Walk away. No one will blame you. You tried. Rook snapped at the ankle of the first attacker, dragging the man across the tile. The second scrambled for his weapon. Mark aimed his gun at Caleb, his arm trembling with fury. You set this up, Mark said, voice raw. You lit the damn fire alarm, cleared the building. Caleb tilted his head. Had to. Business doesn't run with an audience. You're a part of this. I'm the middleman. That's all. The hands that carry things from one place to another. You think I like it? This mall's been dying for years. The county doesn't care. Nobody cares. Except the people with money. And they pay enough to keep me alive. You're selling them, Mark said, every word tasting like bile. Our kids. Our people. Caleb's silence was the answer. The girl stirred in Mark's arms, eyelids fluttering. Her lips moved, forming a word. At first it was faint, broken. Then Mark heard it. Run. The single word cut through him. Mark looked at her, skin clammy, hair sticky with blood. She was fighting to breathe, fighting for her life, and she wanted him to live. No, Mark whispered. Then the gunshot came. The second attacker had found his weapon, aiming past Rook's fury. The shot cracked the air. Mark dropped to his knees. The girl slipped from his arms as he shielded her body with his own. Heat lanced his shoulder, a bullet grazing flesh. His gun clattered to floor. Caleb shouted, Stop! Not him! We need him alive. The words burned in Mark's skull. Alive. Needed. What the hell did that mean? Rook lunged, taking down the gunman with a final, savage snap of jaws that ended in a scream. Silence fell, broken only by ragged breathing. Mark staggered up, blood trickling down his sleeve. His eyes locked with Caleb's. You're coming with me, Mark said, voice a gravel rasp. Caleb laughed softly, shaking his head. You don't get it. You think you found a crime scene? This is bigger than me. Bigger than Ashford. If you walk out those doors alive, Sheriff, you'll bring down more than a mall. You'll paint a target on your back, and hers. Mark raised his gun, ignoring the ache in his arm. Try me? Then Rook barked, sharp, frantic. Mark turned. The girl was gone. The table where she had lain was empty. Chains swayed faintly near the burger stand, as if someone had just slipped past them. She's... Mark's words broke. Where is she? Caleb's smile deepened, and in it was something cruel. She was never yours to save. Mark lunged, but in that instant the mall plunged into darkness. The emergency strobes blinked out. Black swallowed everything. The sound that followed wasn't human. It was a metallic scrape, a dragging chain, and a whisper of movement in the vents above. Rook barked wildly, teeth snapping at the dark. Mark's flashlight clicked on, slicing a narrow beam through the food court. But the girl, if she had ever been real, was gone, hours later. When dawn broke over Ashford Mall, the parking lot glittered with sirens. Deputies swarmed the grounds. Crime scene tape fluttered like yellow ribbons in the cold morning wind. But the service corridor, the meat hooks, the makeshift operating table, gone. Everything scrubbed clean, as if it had never existed. The attackers vanished. No bodies. No blood trails. Only marks wound proved there had been a firefight. Caleb was gone too. His office abandoned, his locker stripped bare. Security cameras across the mall had been wiped, leaving blank static where the truth should have been. Mark stood at the glass entrance. Rook pressed against his leg. His shoulder throbbed. The air smelled of bleach. Deputy Sarah Keller approached, face pale. "Sheriff, we didn't find anything." "Nothing at all. It looks like you imagined it." Mark didn't answer. He couldn't, because in his pocket was something real. When he had lifted the girl, something had slipped into his coat. He hadn't noticed until the chaos was over. Now he pulled it free, a torn piece of fabric, blue, with blood dried into its threads. A scrap from her dress. Proof. He closed his hand around it, knuckles white. "She's real," he whispered. Sarah frowned. "What?" "Nothing." He shoved the cloth back into his pocket. His eyes drifted to the mall's shadowed halls, where light failed to reach. He felt the weight of betrayal, the coil of secrets that stretched beyond this place. He'd lost trust in his own deputies, in the county, in the system. Caleb was right. This was bigger. But he wasn't done. Rook pressed closer, ears perked, sensing his master's resolve. Mark laid a hand on the dog's head. "We'll find her." The shepherd's steady gaze answered like a vow. Mark turned toward the rising sun, the mall at his back, its glass reflecting the light as if mocking him. The world would move on. The county would bury this. His deputies would whisper that he'd lost his mind. But he knew the truth. Somewhere out there, a girl was waiting in the dark. Somewhere out there, Caleb was watching. Somewhere out there, the chains rattled. And the sheriff of a dying county, with nothing left but his dog and his rage, was ready to break every lock. Epilogue. A week later, long after the mall had returned to silence, a janitor found a smear of blood behind the Chinese takeout stand. Above it, faintly etched into the wall, were claw marks. 5 parallel lines deep and fresh, as if carved by desperate hands. No report was filed. The janitor stayed quiet. But when he left that night, he swore he heard something echoing from events. A child's cry, or maybe laughter,